So I'm currently on the phone with Wendy. She's another one of the musicians that reached out about the interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give her the chance to introduce herself.
Hey, my name is Wendy Dumond, and I am a performing songwriter and musician. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I play in a band called Blackfoot Daisy, and I also have kind of a solo project that I'm doing on the side. It's more of a grungy rock and roll thing called Bog Witch. Um, I guess that's it.
Awesome. Very cool. So I always like to start in the beginning with these interviews. Why don't you give me some detail about, how you first found music and what about it like pulled you in and made you want to participate in it?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think the time that I was a really small child, I've always been interested in music. I can remember writing songs in the car when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I've always been an avid music listener. And in my 20s, I got a guitar and I played for about a year and a half, and then I kind of gave it up. And work, family, all those things sort of got in the way. But when I was a little bit older, in my late 30s, I took it up again and I started playing guitar and writing songs. And then eventually I joined a band in 2013, and I've been a performing songwriter since that time.
Okay, so you've kind of always had interactions with music intermittently throughout, your childhood years, teenage years, and then, becoming an adult.
Yeah, yeah. When I was in, I think, elementary school, about fourth or fifth grade, I took piano lessons for a couple of years, and then we moved. And later on, when I was a teenager, I took piano lessons again for about another year. But then it was another, 7 or 8 years before I picked up the guitar, and then like another 10 years after that before I tried it again.
Okay. So when you were going through school or anything, did you participate in like the traditional band curriculum at all?
Yeah, I was in marching band for a couple of years in high school. I played the E flat alto saxophone.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Sure. So, what kind of pulled you back and forth in that learning process where, you'd pick it up for a bit and then life would happen? What was that process like?
Well, I think I'm kind of a perfectionist. So I think when initially, especially when I was younger, if I couldn't play something the way I heard it, then I would get frustrated. And I think that was kind of the source of me giving up was
Mm,
my own, inability to kind of execute what I was hearing. But as I've gotten older, I've just learned to be a lot more accepting and patient with myself. And one thing I've realized too is the consistency. You will get better if you don't stop, but if you stop, you're not going to get better. So,
mm,
that's one of the things I think this last stint of playing the guitar has taught me. I've been doing it now for about 14 years, and I feel like just now I'm able to kind of do things that I've heard in my head for a long time, but wasn't ever really able to, make my hands work right to do it.
mm.
So, I think the consistency and just keeping at it has been the most important thing that skill or thing that I've developed out of it.
Sure. They say you should, pick up an instrument at least 20 minutes a day in order to, really learn how to play it.
Yeah, I do think that's true, and that really is like I can tell. We with the band usually we rehearse a couple of times a week, but sometimes we have weeks where we're between shows and there's no need to rehearse or practice
Hmm.
or whatever. And I know, like, if I don't fill in the time during those down periods, when I come back to it to practice with the band, it's like getting back on the horse. Takes a few minutes
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're not being consistent and practicing the whole time.
You gotta crack your hand a little bit to get it to move the right way.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So once you did kind of decide that were gonna get back into it, you were gonna commit to it this time. What were kind of the steps for like your learning process? And did you kind of immediately just jump into playing with other musicians, or did you kind of take your time to get acclimated?
Oh, yeah, I definitely took my time. I had probably been playing about 5 or 6 years before I even started playing with other people. Again, I think it's just me being very conscious of, how I sound and what I was doing, and I've said this to people before, if I can't play it well, then I just don't play it. I don't think it's so much
Mhm.
true for me these days, but I definitely had that mentality. But I also took some guitar lessons, and that was very helpful for me too.
Mhm.
Especially my teacher really worked with me on not stopping when I would screw up, because I had this
Sure.
bad habit of I'd play something and I'd mess up and I'd start over. And he told me, to mentally picture little kittens dying every time I stopped.
No. I
It
suppose that's
worked.
one way.
Yeah,
That was
it
uh,
worked.
that was one of the lessons I learned early on in my like piano lessons and stuff. My instructor would tell me, if you get 75% of the way through a song and you screw up and then you start over, you're essentially, not doing yourself any favor because you're never playing the end, so you're never gonna get
Yes.
good at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So once you did start playing with other musicians, you said it took you a few years. Did you look out on like Craigslist, or was it just your local community that you started finding musicians to play with? Describe some of that process.
Well, that process for me was a little bit different. I was writing songs after I'd been playing for a couple of years, and I found a couple of online songwriting forums, a forum called Just Plain Folks and another one called the Muses Muse Songwriting Message Board. And it was kind of a community where people could post their MP3s and other people would listen to their songs
Hmm.
and comment on them. And through posting my songs online, I actually met a few local people, musicians, and one musician invited me to a jam. And so I went to the jam, and that was really kind of the beginning of me playing with other people.
Okay, and so that was just kind of a random get together of a bunch of musicians.
Yeah, it was kind of structured. They had, a song book. It was
Hmm.
like a song circle kind of thing, like a folk song circle.
Okay.
And people would pick a song out of the book, and then everybody in the room would play it, and we'd all sing along. And it was a lot of fun,
Hmm.
and we always had a good time doing that. But then it seemed like there were certain people who sort of gravitated towards one another, because
Hmm.
there were certain people who wrote songs that came to those things, and so a group of us kind of splintered off from that and formed kind of a songwriting group where we would give ourselves prompts and we would write songs to the prompts. And eventually, a couple of us paired up and formed a band. And so that was kind of how it all started.
Okay, so the current project that well, you did mention that you also have a solo project, but we'll focus on your non-solo project for the moment. That
Sure.
evolved out of this whole songwriting or songbook group.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, it did because one of the guys that I met there, we started a duo. And then his son joined our band and he played with us for a while. And so we called ourselves Blackfoot Daisy and we started booking shows and playing around at local coffee houses and things like that. And then his son dropped out, and we got a fiddle player, a guy who had a bluegrass background because we were kind of an Americana duo.
Hmm.
And out of that, then now we've got another, we've gone through several different soloists, and now we've got a soloist who's also a songwriter and sings harmonies with us and plays a variety of instruments. So it's rounded us out very nicely.
Awesome. So, why don't you give me some detail about that project? Are you guys writing and recording, or are you just looking to play shows? What's going on with that project?
Well, right now we released an EP in 2015, and then in 2020, really we released a full length album of songs that we had written. And as it stands right now, with COVID and everything, for a time we couldn't perform, so we performed a lot online. We have our own Facebook page, so we would go. We had a show on Sunday nights that we would go live from, and um, we had it was kind of like a little kind of hee-haw show where we would
Hmm.
do a weekly letter, and it was very casual and a lot of fun. And then in addition to that, we performed on a lot of different other sites. And so, we performed online during COVID. And since during the different, aspects of COVID before Delta, when, people were getting back out for a while, we were definitely out then last summer, played a lot of breweries and a lot of, we've done some restaurants, we've done bars, we do basically the gamut.
Sure.
So, we kind of play anywhere and everywhere we can, and then also we play online, and we've released two discs of music now.
Okay. And so what do you think like the next steps are for that project? Do you think you guys are going to go back to the studio, or are you just looking to do
Yeah,
some touring?
we are talking about maybe next summer. Do we had toured a little bit a few years ago. We did the Carolinas and some in Alabama, just some kind of small venues around in that three-state area. But we're talking about maybe trying to do that again, and maybe book some better venues this time when we go back out.
Hmm.
Because we have a lot, that was back when we were first starting, and I think now we have a lot more contacts and we've broadened our network. I think a lot of this is just networking and
Sure.
getting to know people too. And some touring acts have come through, and we've opened for them at various venues around town as well.
Hmm.
So that kind of gives us connections, to places outside of Atlanta that we can go play at. So we're definitely looking at that in the future. And we've got a number of songs recorded that are mastered and ready to go. We're just going to start releasing them pretty soon.
Sure. So tell me about your solo project. What are you working on?
Solo project sort of came out of the pandemic. I Before I, joined Blackfoot Daisy, which is definitely more of a folky Americana, all acoustic kind of thing. I, was always kind of a rock and roll person. And so during the pandemic, I started listening to a lot of that stuff again, because I was working from home, and I just would, work and listen to music. And so that made me decide that I wanted to maybe pick up the electric guitar and play electric guitar because I'd never done it before.
Hmm.
And that evolved into a 4-song EP of songs that are very sort of, they're kind of feminist in bent, kind of harken back to the days of Riot Girl and L7 and Courtney Love and Liz Phair and all those 90s bands.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
So that's what that project is, and I finally just released the last song for that project on March 8th, which was International Women's Day.
Hmm. Awesome. Very cool. So, what are some of your favorite memories that you've had in the time that you've been working on music? Whether it's something that had an impact on you or something that keeps you motivated.
Oh gosh, I've we've kind of paid our dues. We've played a lot of places. Sometimes we've played to nobody, and sometimes we've played to several hundred people. We've not really broken out to bigger venues yet, but you could always dream.
Hmm.
But I think mostly, for me, those experiences are sort of a collective of just positive things. Like I never thought that I would be able to go as far as I have with this. So and I think every time we play, when somebody comes up and says, hey, we just really enjoyed you guys and we love your music, that's, I think, it makes it all. I think I'd do it anyway, regardless.
Hmm.
But it just makes it better when you have a people that you connect to, and or
Hmm.
somebody comes up and tells you, your song made me cry. I mean, I don't want to make people cry, but it's like at the same time they connect. They connected
Right.
to what you did, and I think that's really what I think. One thing that's happened from doing music for me is that I don't know that I had like huge expectations, but I think you kind of like initially when you start doing it, it's all about you. And then I think as you evolve as a musician and an artist, you realize, it's really about the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you connect with the audience, then you've won.
Mm-hmm.
If you can sit
Absolutely.
in a room and nobody's talking and nobody's looking at their phone and they're listening to what you're doing and saying and they're enjoying it, and maybe they're escaping a crappy day, that's really the reward that you get from making music, in my opinion.
Sure, yeah. It gets harder and harder every day to pull people away from their phones.
Yes. Yeah, it's difficult. Um,
Well, since we're talking about phones, what are some of the social media where people can find your stuff?
well, right now, Blackfoot Daisy is the name of the band that I play in, and we have a YouTube channel. I believe it's called Blackfoot Daisy Music, and we are on SoundCloud and Spotify and Bandcamp and all the other venues like Deezer and Apple
Mm-hmm.
Music. You can find us on all those platforms. And then my solo project is called Bog Witch, and that is also out on Spotify and Apple. iTunes. I don't know if iTunes still exists, but there's Apple Music, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have a YouTube channel which is Wendy Dumond Music as well. And all of the Bog Witch EP has videos attached to it. And they're all on my Wendy Dumond Music channel. And of course, I'm on Facebook. I have an artist page and then a regular page, and I'm on Instagram.
Awesome. Very
And the
cool.
band is too.
Excellent, excellent. I'll make sure all that stuff gets added in there. So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So just a message that you want to throw out there.
Well, my message would be, just love yourself for who you are. I think that a lot of me doing music, has evolved into me accepting the fact that I'm not perfect, accepting the fact that I'm not always going to be, the most perfect person in the room, but you know, I can be the person who tells a story that people connect to. And I think that that's been a reward for me for putting myself out there, that there are other people like me who enjoy what I like and listen to my songs and enjoy them. And I think it's all about connecting with other people, because I think in this era, even though we have all these devices and ways to connect with other people, it just seems like they sort of stand in the way in some regard, with our connections. So I think that that's really, for me, what music has been the ultimate reward.